Twisted Arrow is a bow and arrow based action-adventure game. It's available for the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift for about $17 US. Here's my review of it in its current state as of May 2017. We'll start with the story. To sum it up, you're basically a one-person bow and arrow army, tasked with infiltrating an occupied city to rescue a bunch of civilians. While not particularly enthralling, it does at least feel fairly well hashed out, like there's a clear objective that you're working towards. The only real character in this game is the voice in your headset, guiding you through your journey. The dialogue fits well, for the most part, and although it's fairly frequent throughout the game, I never once found it to be annoying.
Keep moving, double time it. There. Those are the signal jammers we were looking for. Destroy them.
Now for gameplay. The game has 6 different levels. This is including a tutorial level which does its job really well. Speaking of jobs done well, let's take a moment to appreciate the menu screen. Also, the various gameplay options offered. Back to it. Each level presents you with a new section of the city, a different objective, and a swath of arrow fodder. Now, some games seem to just throw together a bunch of levels, randomly populate them with enemies, and throw a half-baked story over the top to tie it all together. This game does it right. Story, gameplay, and level design complement each other very well, giving each a strong and unique sense of purpose, and the game as a whole a real feeling of momentum. That said, all is not candy and roses, which brings us to locomotion. I ask, what's worse than only being able to teleport in a game? The answer? Only being able to teleport to pre-chosen locations. I have little doubt this will be enough to steer people away from this title, and I can hardly blame them. Having to search for teleportation points mid-combat is frustrating as all hell. Let's talk about the enemy. You've got your simple yellow grunts, harder blue grunts, zombies, big red dudes, big red shielded dudes, snipers, drones, mechs, and the occasional boss. The variety of enemy keeps the combat really fresh, and as a result, this is a game where tactics really matter. I found the AI in this game to be a bit of a mixed bag. The enemy, they behave somewhat tactically, which is a damn sight more than most other VR titles. And they also don't psychically know exactly where you are at all times, allowing you to occasionally get the drop on them. Unfortunately, there are visible seams. The pathfinding can also be a bit odd at times. Onto your weapon, namely your bow and arrow, the mechanics of which are great. You have the option of using either plain arrows or one of 4 special arrows: explosive, freezing, proximity mine, and homing. Whether or not you can use special arrows depends on the energy of your bow. Energy is replenished by shooting energy power-ups, dropped by downed enemies. Aside from enemies, there are plenty of other things to keep your arrows flying, such as barrels, fuel tanks, poison barrels, searchlights, different searchlights, and chickens, for some reason. Onto sound and music. Nothing really to write home about. They get the job done, but neither fantastically nor poorly.
Set off those alarms. Destroy the searchlights or they'll call for reinforcements.
That brings us to health. Health is displayed on your bow next to the energy meter. It looks good and does the job, however, I would have preferred a more intrusive method, such as the tried and true reddening of the field of view that most other VR titles use. Health is non-regenerative and can only be replenished by shooting health power-ups, which, as with energy power-ups, are dropped by downed enemies. If you die in this game, you'll find yourself right back at the start of the level. No checkpoints. Having died right at the end of a level, then having the game crash on me on my second attempt just as I'd reached the end of the level again, I felt checkpoints would have been a pretty nice idea. Though I do acknowledge that some people will like this high stakes approach to dying.
Alright, listen up.
That leads us nicely into difficulty. The game offers 3 difficulty settings. Harder difficulty means faster bullets, faster, smarter and more plentiful enemy, and less health and energy power-ups. This is a welcome change from games that simply make enemies damage sponges at higher difficulties.
We need you to find a way out of
The difficulties are also well tuned, with easy providing a nice stress-free playthrough, hard providing a very formidable challenge, and normal sitting nicely between the two. Graphics? Well, not all that in a bag of chips. Overall the quality is somewhat lower than its peers, and some objects in my opinion don't really fit well with the rest of the environment. In my 2 hours of playing I also suffered 3 crashes, not all that endearing. Outside of that, the overall performance was fine on my 1070. As far as graphics settings go, the game offers the sole option of changing shadow quality. More would have been nice. Finally, we arrive at the verdict. VR must-have? Not quite. But despite the terrible locomotion system, this is still a solid game, and honestly, it's one of the most well-rounded story-driven experiences I've played in VR.